and thank you to our first panel. Thank you, Ms. Richardson, Ms. Moore, and Ms. De La Rosa in particular, for having the strength to share these horrific ordeals that you endured with the U.S. Senate and the American public. I'd like to begin, please, by discussing the imbalance in power that underlies so much of this abuse. Ms. De La Rosa, you made reference to this in your remarks, the power over transfer, the power over all aspects of your life. How did that feel, and how did that play a role in making you vulnerable to this abuse?
Senator, I felt trapped, powerless. It wasn't, there were so many things that were taken from me, or times I was stuck in transit. I was held longer than I was supposed to be because of not being at a facility that could file my paperwork. I was in prison 6 months longer than I was supposed to be for this investigation. There's just so much we need to work on as far as the being able to report it.
And Ms. De La Rosa, the officer who assaulted you had previously been investigated.
Yes, sir.
For sexually abusing other female prisoners.
Yes, sir.
But was still on the job.
Yes, sir.
So you're in a federal prison supervised by a male officer who had complete control over all aspects of your life.
Yes, sir.
Unrestricted access to you while working.
Yes, sir.
Who eventually pled guilty to sexual abuse, was sentenced to 135 months in prison.
Yes, sir.
While that abuse was ongoing, did you have any safe outlet to report it? Did you feel you had any safe outlet to report it?
No, sir. In Lexington, they have something called the penalty box, which is if an officer is under investigation, they put them in the phone and email room. So they listen to your phone calls and your emails. So the inmates would call it the hot box, but all officers called it the penalty box. So any way that you can report something to outside staff on the PREA signs throughout the prison is an email or a phone number. But you wouldn't feel safe reporting it when the officer you want to report is in the penalty box, listening to all of your phone calls and reading all of your emails. So no, at Lexington, I did not feel safe reporting.
What kind of retaliation did you fear?
All of the retaliation that I got. I was working on a 8,000-hour welding apprenticeship. I got transferred to a prison that didn't have that program. I was 46 hours from completing that program. I was transferred to the prison that I was scared to be at. I got transferred straight back there after reporting it. I got put back at the prison that I had reported. All of my belongings ended up missing. There were letters from my son and my grandpa, my pawpaw that passed, pictures over the last 9 years that I was incarcerated of my child coming to see me, and he passed away. I cannot ever get those things back. Letters he wrote me since he was 10 years old. I'll never get those things back, and they just came up missing. It's supposed to be they tell you that whenever you tell the officer that it's tell on an officer that it's completely confidential, but all of those things that happened to me afterwards were not coincidence. They were not.
Access and proximity to your family, how did they play a role in your fear of retaliation and the retaliation that you experienced?
Not being able to make phone calls constantly being put in once COVID started, quarantine. They would restart your quarantine, put you 21 days, no phone calls, no anything. So every time they move you, you have 21 days of not being able to contact your family, of not being able to have video visits with your kids. And for 9 years, that's what my kids looked forward to every week. They can do anything they want, and they do.
Ms. Moore, I'd like to ask you the same question, how access to family, proximity to family play a role. And if you wouldn't mind, Ms. Moore, just to ensure your microphone. Thank you.
Like she said, the same fear of not getting incident reports for nothing, not being able to call home, not being able to have contact with those video visits. I didn't necessarily have that happen where I was at, but I did fear retaliation, and which is why I never reported it while I was still at the prison. My whole goal was to try to get closer to home. I had put in a near home transfer before I went to Alderson, and because Alderson needed head count, I had to go there. So that's how I ended up at Alderson. So again, here I am trying to fight to get closer to my family so that I can have visits, because I had one visit while I was there for my daughter's birthday. And that was, I did 7 years in prison. And so being able to talk to my family and my grandmother, because she's older and sickly, was very important to me. And my daughter was 7 when I went to prison. So that was very important to me. And like she said, the officers have a lot of control, you know? They have a lot of control, and we really don't have a say-so. I had already been in prison with women who had reported stuff and been sent to county jails where the food is just moldy and they're wearing underwear that are been previously wore. It's like nobody wants to be uprooted from a prison that you've taken time to do programs in and be sent to another prison because you report this stuff. So I'm sure that's why a lot of people don't report, besides the retaliation. And I had already heard that he had been on an investigation before, but nothing was done. So, I mean, who was I to report something thinking that something was going to happen? And I didn't report it. And they called me after I transferred prisons. I was at a whole nother prison before they called me to ask about it.
Thank you, Ms.